Extreme case of child neglect in early October in Sissonville area of Kanawha County.
So for the first time, we are seeing one of those two relatives in court for a preliminary hearing. News Channel 3's Kim Rafferty sat in on the hearing today and joins us live outside the Kanawha County Courthouse. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Tim, both Gene Whitefeather and Donald Lance were charged in connection with a child neglect case where two children were found locked inside of a shed and another child was found in dangerous conditions. Now, Donald Lance waived his preliminary hearing today, but we did see Gene Whitefeather in court for the first time since her arrest. Kanawha County's assistant prosecuting attorney, Deborah Rusnak, spoke about the testimony involving Whitefeather's case.
You heard the testimony today. What these children were going through is frankly horrifying and despicable. There's no other way to describe it.
On the stand, the deputy that responded to the call on October 2nd described the shed where she found two children locked inside at Whitefeather's preliminary hearing.
And one of them replied, "Ma'am, I'm unable to open the door from the inside."
Deputy H.K. Burdett describes what she says it looked like inside the shed.
I was repulsed, for the lack of a better term. As soon as the door was open, the heat from inside hit us. The smell it made my eyes water.
Burdett says in her testimony that the oldest child told her she lived in the shed.
There was a table and one chair, no running water, no circulating air, no beds. The toilet for the children looked like a hospital pan or like a camping toilet.
Burdett said she found 6 to 7 deep freezers of food in a section of the barn that could not be accessed, and she spotted a third child in dangerous conditions in the window of the home.
I don't believe there was any circulating air in the house either. It was a very nice house. There was hardly furniture in it. Very hot, very, very empty.
I attempted to speak with the defense, but we were not able to talk to them in the courtroom. Judge Leslie Grace denied a request for Whitefeather's bail reduction. Bail is still set at $200,000 with the addition of home confinement. Donald Lance, who was also charged in connection with neglect of the three children, waived a preliminary hearing.
Both of them are where they need to be pending the trial of this matter.
Now, days after both Lance and Whitefeather were arrested, WSAZ obtained the 911 calls, and Rusnak spoke about how important it is to report incidents that they find concerning in their neighborhoods. We'll also keep you updated with when Whitefeather or Lance is in court next.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Kim. The two, by the way, have not yet posted bail. Rusnak says that case is now bonded over to the circuit court, where it will be presented to the grand jury.
Daniel Lance and Gene Whitefeather, who were released on bond in February, but a Kanawha County prosecuting attorney claims they use money from human trafficking profits as their cash bond, and that is illegal. Let's check in now with 13 News reporter Sam DeCoste, who's live for us tonight in the newsroom. Sam, you've been sifting through court documents all afternoon. You found that this money in question was tied to their home.
Well, Pat, according to circuit court records, Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather sold a ranch they owned in Washington State for $725,000 back in February of this year. 3 days later, they were released on $400,000 bail. Fast forward 2 months, Lance and Whitefeather sold their home in Sissonville for nearly $300,000 more. Kanawha County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Chris Krivaniak says all of those funds are subject to being seized by the state. He says that's because their 5 kids were at both properties during periods where they claim human trafficking took place. We told you before that Lance and Whitefeather were charged with child neglect, creating risk of injury in October after 2 of their adopted children were found locked in a barn with no running water or working bathroom. A third child was also found in an unprotected loft. The civil case was filed through a complaint of forfeiture a week ago today. Now Lance and Whitefeather have 30 days to file a counterclaim, which could lead to litigation and even a trial. While they would not face additional criminal charges, the state could potentially seize their bond money as well as their profits from both property sales in West Virginia and Washington State. This all depends on the outcome of this civil case. As for the ongoing criminal case, they are expected to appear back in Kanawha County Circuit Court next Tuesday. In the newsroom, Sam DeCoste, 13 News.
Sam, thank you so much.
The Sissonville couple accused of human trafficking and forced labor were back in court today. This is the case where Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather were arrested after deputies found their adopted teens locked in a barn last fall in Sissonville. But as Anna Saunders explains, today's hearing was focused on their financial situation as prosecutors consider some of their money illegal.
That's right, Gina. As new charges of human trafficking, forced labor, and civil rights violations stacked up against Whitefeather and Lance, so did their bond amount, as they are now back in jail on $500,000 cash bonds each. But the matter addressed in court today was about the first bond they posted when they were able to put down $400,000 cash back in February. This raised red flags with the prosecution, as they believe that money is contraband and are now looking to have it turned over to the state.
It's the prosecution's ultimate goal to seize the $400,000 that Whitefeather and Lance posted for bond in February. The argument is that bonds were paid by selling homes in Washington state and in Sissonville, where human trafficking occurred. But what happened today is Kanawha County Chief Circuit Court Judge Mary Claire Akers signed a protective order for that money, meaning it must stay with the sheriff's office until the courts decide if it will be seized or not.
We're not trying to forfeit the money without due process. We just want to protect it and preserve it until we've had a chance to litigate the claim.
A 16-count indictment was recently returned against Lance and Whitefeather, going far beyond their initial charge of child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from a shelter, targeting them for their race to do forced labor. The complaint said Lance and Whitefeather first had them at this 80-acre ranch in Washington state and then moved to the Sissonville home. This is where deputies, while doing a welfare check last fall, found 2 teenagers locked in a barn in what investigators called deplorable conditions. After they were arrested, the 2 sold the Washington home for about $700,000 and the Sissonville home for about $300,000. Prosecutors believe they used that money for bond.
And the state's position is that these assets were used to maintain and harbor minors in violation of the human trafficking statute. Our position is that's not true, and we look forward to a court in which we can prove otherwise.
So for now, the money is supposed to remain untouched until the court proceedings play out. Whitefeather's defense attorney Mark Plants and Kanawha County Assistant Prosecutor Chris Kavaniak both said seeking forfeiture for human trafficking, though common in federal court, will be uncharted waters for all in circuit court.
I've never had one in 20 years. The human trafficking statute is relatively new. Chris Kavaniak's the prosecutor. He's formerly a federal prosecutor where they do this all the time. He's very competent, knows what he's doing. But this is an issue of first impression for me, and I think the court. I don't want to. You know, when I looked this up, I couldn't find anything about it, and you notice that Mr. Kavaniak said the same thing. That in state court, this really hasn't been done before.
Now, with this $400,000 now protected, it can't be used at all right now while the protective order is in place. But if the state wins out in this and the forfeiture is granted, it could possibly be treated like drug seizure money, where percentages go to arresting agencies and the prosecution, or it is common for human trafficking money to go to the victims.